Welcome everyone to my Wednesday chess stream here on Twitch and lichess. This is International Master William Paschall. I'm just editing the scene here so we get our window capture back up. It was up when I did a test, but it decided it wanted to disappear. I fixed it and we should be ready to go in a second. Welcome everyone. International Master William Paschall. We are streaming here blitz and classical chess with weird openings. Unusual openings, Weird Wednesday is what I call it. This looks good. Okay. Unusual opening stream today, which means that I'm playing stuff that I wouldn't normally play. It doesn't have to be extremely strange or unsound openings. We're trying to play stuff a little bit offbeat. A little bit like not within my normal repertoire. Maybe a chance to play experimental stuff that I normally am hesitant to play. So, hyper-modern openings, gambits, classical gambits. I was thinking about maybe not starting it today, but maybe in the future having like a theme with it. I don't know if it would narrow it down too much to have like a Weird Wednesday theme every week. One week like hyper modern chess, another week like classical gambits. But maybe that's narrowing it down too much. I'll think about it. We've got 5 challenges. Hunt the King is first. Plukro, Suvik, Mule Skinner, and Milan. I'm going to call him Milan Kirai. It's Milan Cry. So we do ask that you challenge us between 5 and 8 minutes with a small increment. Anything between 3 and 5 seconds. The faster games do better with a 5-second increment, like 5-5 or even 6-5. And the longer games, 7-8 minutes, 3 seconds is enough for the increment. Zen Chess Challenge. So we've got 6 challenges already. And you guys can feel free to play something experimental and unusual yourself. If you do that, then I won't have to do it. So the idea is to get some cool openings, some fun stuff we might not normally see on my regular Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday stream. I am here Monday to Friday streaming this time 10 to 12:30 Central European every weekday, and Sundays I'm doing a stream where I'm doing a simul on Sundays. This Sunday I do have a team game in the morning, but I should be able to do my simul. I think maybe we'll take 20 players instead of 25 to keep the simul a little bit shorter on Sunday at 6:30 p.m. CET. So my normal reaction is to reach for my c-pawn to play either the Sicilian or Caro-Kann, but we're doing unusual opening stream, which means I'm going to be a little more liberal with my opening choices. So against Hunt the King, let's play e5. I'm really weak against your openings, said Zen Chess. Yesterday Zen Chess, was it against you? I had the Grand Prix attack with a3. Now Hunt the King played he played something a little offbeat first, and I've done this with white. I have a bad score with this opening with white. The center attack or center game. Black doesn't really have a choice here. I don't know if you can play d5, the symmetrical defense, but I know that 99.9% of the time black plays e takes d. Well, white has a pretty wide choice here. All sorts of gambits. What is it called? Bishop c4. And now we have the Danish gambit, which I did play myself recently. So black has, I guess, lots of moves in this position. You could play it a little bit like a kind of Sicilian c3 attack after, or c3 variation after knight f6. d5 is a standard move, but I guess if you don't know what to do here, I think I recommended d5 to someone recently, but what am I thinking here? Every day I have an SMS from someone organizing a poker game. Okay, D takes C. I could hear my phone beeping in the background. You guys might not hear that. Zenchess says, what? Yesterday our game went E4, G6, D4. You played C5 eventually. Okay, that was the game. Yeah, Zenchess. So, you know, like one of our viewers commented, I mean, it's much more standard not to play bishop E3 there. I did notice that game. And I did notice that one of my old nemesis, can I say that? Win Walk Tronkson played, who's now like 2680. He played that himself, but it's not really great. You know, bishop E3 is not that good in that position because I have a pretty strong queenside attack. If you try to castle long, with I can unleash B5 really easily. So I guess the truth is that bishop E3 isn't so great. You should stick to normal procedures there. Yeah, now I can't remember. I know that D5 is probably a move here, right? Yes, I can take on B2. Then play knight F6. No, take on B2. Play D5. It's been a while since I played the black side of the Danish Gambit. Alright. Now I play D5. Give the pawn back. And I believe this is kind of like a main line. The last time I looked at this, it was approximately equal, but kind of imbalanced. Oh my gosh, I lost my queen. No, this is all standard. I don't know if black has a better way to do this, but white just lost a piece. Hunter King, you just dropped a piece. You have to play queen back to D2. You know he's an expert in the... He's an expert in this. You have to play the queen back to D2, Hunter King. So as not to lose a piece. Maybe I should give him a take back. I don't normally, you know, promote takebacks, but since it's so early in the game and it's actually an interesting position, I thought maybe it's within reason here. I have previously declared like I'd be willing to give one take back per game. This is our one take back for the day. Just because I don't want to ruin this opening. It's typical classical line. He has to play queen d2 here. And then this is the position. So now I've played a few games in blitz with white in this position. White has the central majority. So I wish I knew the theory a little bit deeper here. It would probably be beneficial to do so. But I'm going to guess rook e8 because we can get his knight, you know, not to come to f3, hopefully, by forcing him to play f3. Still, his structure is very solid, and not sure who's better here objectively. We have a queenside majority. My king maybe goes back to g8. We keep pressure on his center, but the open file is the question. We also have to promote our queen side. I'm not really sure about black's plan in this position. I was thinking about knight d5 right away, but it looks unnatural. I'm not developing any pieces. Not developing any pieces is usually bad. Why don't I play like b6? b6 and c5. 3-1 stronger than the 4-2 where the kings are. We're talking about pawn majorities, and stronger in the sense that it's probably faster to create a passed pawn. But I'm a little bit concerned about my king being the target for like advances on the king side. Him having more space in the region of my king. This was not expected. Castle's queen side. That's really dropping a piece. Hunt the king. I can't give you a second take back. Yeah, we tried, but I'm sorry. No, I mean, this is a position where clearly, like, the white king belongs on f2, hunt the king. I mean, you don't want a castle here. You want to keep your king near the center. And f2 is the perfect square. So, anyway, what we learned at opening, at least, if you didn't know, this is the main, maybe the main line of the Danish Gambit, I guess. It was a mouse slip, he says. You meant to play king f2? Really? Okay. All right. I'll trust you. He's been a long time player here on the stream. If he says it's a mouse slip, I believe him. But no more takebacks, even if there's a mouse slip, because this game is taking too long. All right. King f2. c5. This was my plan with b6 and bishop a6. I was reticent earlier because he could have gone like knight c4, and I thought his move order, you know, led me to stop knight c4, knight d6, which was really scary. Now he's got a new route, and this is what I meant by the king side. His pawn majority on the king side being a little bit problematic. It's starting to have an effect on my king. You know, knight starts coming to f5. There's a fork on d6. It's tactics here. I mean, he doesn't worry about his king is not involved in issues on the queen side. He was afraid of knight b4. Now, when we're not talking about the games here, we can also talk about the Weekend A tournament. I did see all the games yesterday, but you know, it was yesterday afternoon. I've forgotten now which games were which. So if you guys ask me about a particular game from, if you ask me about particular games from Weekend A, I might get a little confused. But I'll try to remember. Elinov won again. He's like 4-0 or something. Is that right? Did he really win 4 games? Am I hallucinating? What were the other decisive games yesterday? I saw all the games in entirety, but I don't remember the results very well. When Van Welly lost again, Van Welly's just, he's not prepared for this kind of tournament. He should retire from this event. Okay, now good question. We take with the king or with the pawn. The pawn would control his majority, but also give him a really powerful outpost on f5. So maybe I'll take with the king, not to give him this monstrous knight outpost, which he's immediately employing, but he missed another tactic. That was my idea when I played bishop d3. Carlsen won also, and so won against VW. I mean YW. Oh God, the Carlsen YW game. It was atrocious. Like, I've got to stop reading chess-based news because it's like I don't really like their. I don't know why I go to that site, honestly. I've got to find a better chess news site. So, I thought the game like Carlsen versus Wei Yi was awful. Carlsen played the opening badly, and then just like Black just collapsed like a baby in an equal-ish type of position. I guess that Wei Yi was just like psyched out or something. I mean, it just didn't. It's like a typical Carlsen win where he didn't really do anything, but the opening was awful. He was like G4. What kind of move is that? It's like horrendous. Black equalized after 12 moves or something, and then Carlsen plays G4. I thought it was just an absolutely atrocious move. Of course, it doesn't matter. It's Carlsen. He'll like outplay the guy later somehow, but it just looks bad. You know, it just doesn't look like the best move at all. I think Carlsen just feels like he can do anything and just outplay them eventually later, due to time pressure or just slight mistakes. He can take a slightly worse position and beat people. You know. Anyway, this is over. So I hated the Carlsen game. The move G4 was like disgusting by White, and Black should never lose there. But Wei Yi played awful after that. Give Carlsen credit though. You know, his technique is very, very good. Once he had a good position, it was game over very quickly, very accurate. You know, his endgame technique is nothing short of almost perfect. So, Carlsen, yeah, I know that. It didn't really matter. I mean, he was like positionally falling apart. His knight was getting undermined in the center of the board. I mean, Wei Yi just played really, really badly. ChessBase calls their article, or like there's an article that says there were 3 quality wins, but I mean, this is not a quality win. I mean, I don't know by what standard you measure quality wins, but this is certainly not a quality game. Blue Crow 5+4. If that's how a 2700 is supposed to play, like crumbling in an equal position in 10 moves with Black, you know, then I don't know what chess is coming to it. It's like a lotto or something. That game is far from quality. The opening was like, Carlsen should play knight to G3. That would be a normal move. He played G4, leaving like a massive hole on F4. It looks like Black's just equal, if he's accurate. But then Wei Yi, like, for no reason at all, Wei Yi trades off his central pawn on E5. I think I'll just like give up my whole like grip on the center for absolutely no reason whatsoever. With E takes D, you know. Maybe I should start. Maybe I should become like a chess critic, you know, where I create my own YouTube channel where I just like tear apart the games of 2700 players. Blue Crow, thank you for playing the Wing Gambit. Of course, I'd get a lot of shit from people. Oh, you're just a 2400 player. How can you criticize 2700s? But I mean, it's the same thing as like any other art. I mean, there are critics out there who, you know, are food critics, art critics, and they're not painters of the level of the people they're like criticizing. But come on now, Carlsen's game, that Wei Yi game was bad. So won against what did I say? VW. Sorry, I'm talking about Wei Yi. I went on this long tangent. So 1 against 2. We have to play weird openings today. That's the rule. VW. Oh, Van Welly. I never heard anyone call him VW. For a second, I thought you like mistyped Wei Yi, and it was just my vision. I was thinking of Carlsen. Okay, Blue Crow. Wing Gambit. This is one of two ways White can play in the wing gambit. The other way is a3, d5, e takes d5, queen takes d5, knight f3. This is actually fun. I had a friend who used to play this. And the position is kind of similar to the French, and you can actually do this against the French as well. Yeah, Van Welly's just... he doesn't belong in this tournament. I mean, in previous years, he's played credibly, but it seems like he's just out of his league here. I don't know, maybe he's playing too much poker or something. I don't know what he does, but he's not that old, you know, but he's been declining for quite some time. So I'm assuming it's because he's not working on his game. It's not a matter of he's not good enough or he's too old. You know, it just seems like Van Welly is like just not working on his game anymore or something. A3, queen b6, I think. Attacking the central pawn. Rapport. So played against Rickard Rapport not 2 rounds ago. Tubby killer. I think that was the 3rd round. In the 3rd round, So beat Rapport in a back and forth game. That was one of the most exciting games so far, if not the most exciting one. But last round, no, they played different opponents. You know, no weird openings, Mule Skinner. That's impossible. Well, it doesn't. It's all relative. I'm not playing like h4 or anything on the first move. Relative. I count like the Dutch defense as a weird opening. Is for me. If it's a weird opening for you, you know, something you just don't play normally, it doesn't have to be an extremely unusual opening or something unsound. Wasted all my time talking about Wednesday here. We're just in like the beginning of, I guess, the book, if there is such a thing on this variation. I've never been entirely like confident and comfortable with this line with black, to be perfectly honest. This is what they recommend in some books. But not being a French defense player, first of all, makes me a little uncomfortable in these type of lines. The last time I played one of these was against somebody here in a lichess blitz tournament. I remember some expert level, maybe around the same rating as Plucro, and I was very. This was a few months ago, but I felt uncomfortable about my position, and I never have felt really comfortable in this line against the wing gambit. It's like a French. It seems like White has reasonable kind of compensation. I'm not sure it really matters which way I take on b4, but I suppose we take with check. So what happened last round with Rapport? He didn't lose again, right? I'm tempted to go back to f8 here, but I don't think that would be very efficient. We'll see what White does. I often play, I know this is going to sound silly, but I often play e4 in knight h6. And honestly, Plucro, I don't mind losing tempo here. I'm going to hold on to my dark square bishop. It's debatable whether the exchange on h6 is good or not. This is a typical theme in the advanced French. I guess there's a good chance White has pretty good compensation here. But this exchange is allowed in the advanced French, which this essentially is. I don't know where I'm going to put my king. I had a friend who was a lifetime French player. Once in a sort of position like this, I saw him go like bishop g7 and castles, I think. Not unreasonable. I may have to take some defensive measures on the queen side. I'm a little bit worried about knight a3. First of all, a6. And I can play knight a5 sometimes. He's obviously not afraid of knight to b3. a6 was essential to make sure he doesn't get in knight b5. So the only way to conceivably castle would be to play like bishop g7 and castle's kingside. As I did mention, my friend FIDE master Alex Cherniak, I've seen him play the French all his life, and he's a 2300 player. He was decent in the French, and he would play probably bishop g7 and castles here. The other option is just to leave my king in the center, period, forever, which is also very viable. I'm used to doing that in the Sicilian. So now his knight comes to the center. This seems meek, but let's try. Why meek? What other choice do you have, really? Yeah, this could be problematic for me. Well, I guess I'm going to play knight c4, take back with a pawn. Then the center just comes down on me. Oh, no. Having a little trouble finding a move here. b5. Oh, man, this is awkward. Rook g8 sacrifices a pawn. It's hard for me to keep everything protected. I don't know. Well, that I didn't expect. Okay. I'm at least sacrificing a pawn back here to secure the queen side. I guess I can afford to give the h7 pawn back. Well, you could have taken on c4 with the bishop. That was what I initially expected. Why rook c1? I have to do something. I just dropped the pawn for nothing. Oh my God. Wow, Plucros played the best game he's played against me here. He seems very at home in this position. Why not knight takes h6? This is also good. Oh, goodness, this is very, very dubious. It's what? I'm ham. You're doing great here. You're like positionally killing me. Starting off yesterday with a loss. Today, we did get a win under our belt, but I'm telling you guys, I'm not happy with this line. It's not the first time I felt myself. I've got to find something else to play against this opening because I'm not comfortable in this structure. I don't like playing this kind of French type position, to be perfectly honest. It's the semi-Slav. I think I went to the wrong square. And it's given me a moment of freedom. What on earth am I achieving with this move, Queen d6? Playing like Topalov on a bad day. What is going on? What? What? Pukro just lost his mind. Thank you. Thank you for sacrificing. Okay, don't try this at home. This was a bad game by me. It started to go south when I played bishop e7, bishop takes h6, g takes h6, but I don't think that should be wrong. Queen c1, even bishop f8, bishop d3. Here in this position, after bishop d3, black has to find the right plan. And as I mentioned earlier, I mean, maybe I should go for it, like with bishop g7 and f6 and castles kingside, or just bishop g7 and castles kingside and try to play f6 before it's too late. I thought I could just kind of hold the position, but then I ran out of anything to do. Mule Skinner, thank you guys for joining me. f3 is not really a good move. It makes me stutter. So yeah, with white I wanted to play something hyper modern, but we'll see. I'm not sure that Mule Skinner is gonna cooperate, or he plays classically though. I mean, he should play e5 here. So this was my weird opening idea for today. I thought we'll play this Alekhines defense reversed. This was played by Grandmaster Larson quite a few times. Our one of our greatest influences. But he played knight c6. I played this against Larry Christensen once, and the game went something like e4, knight d4. And I think Larry played knight c6 there. But it's been so long I don't remember. Larson had a number of good games with this particular variation. But objectively it's not dangerous for black. However, Mule Skinner is playing, he's being faithful to his repertoire. The problem is that Mule Skinner likes closed positions, and I've been playing the Scandinavian against him with black to avoid that. Yes, Blue Crow. There was a guy, I know, this really sort of annoying guy who talks constantly, Sati Husari. It's an I am from Syria. He's constantly trying to sell things and bother people at tournaments, but he played that once against Alexander Ivanov. Ivanov was white. It was like a game 60 or something, and he got into G3 in the 4 knights against Husari, and Husari sacked a piece on E4, and Ivanov was like, he used like 28 minutes when Husari played knight takes E4, and then retreated both his knights back to like B1 and G1 and somehow won the game. But it was really insane. He was like hyperventilating and freaking out. He used half his time on like move 4 to this position. If I do E4, knight F6, knight C3, knight takes E4. It's like playing G3 in the 4 knights. The guy went and did that, and then Ivanov thought for half an hour in a game 60. After like 7 moves, both his knights had retreated back to the first rank, and he had like less than 5 minutes left. But somehow won the game. You had lessons with Klaus Berg, and remember we looked at the Grand Prix attack with reverse colors. Yeah, I actually recommend the Grand Prix attack with reverse colors too. D4 here should be interesting. Normally I wouldn't do that. I'd probably play some kind of reverse Pierce. But with this particular opponent, with Muleskinner, he plays much better, it seems like, in closed positions. So trying to get some kind of Scandinavian going on. Yeah, Plukro, you had a completely winning position with the knight on E5. You just had to slowly squeeze my position. You could even like play knight takes C6 at the end with my king on D8 and trade your good knight for the bishop and still probably have a massive advantage with my king wandering around in the middle of the board there, but it's probably not necessary. I mean, you did sacrifice a pawn in the opening, right? But then you got it back on H7, and I have no compensation for the fact that my king is bad. Okay, so it's kind of like an Alekhines reversed. I have played C4. This might transpose to an English opening, though. The question is, is knight G5 correct here? It's not as good as the typical English opening, I guess. Because he has D5. Let's play knight E5, something a little different. But he's actually kept the position in a closed structure, which is good for him. I'm just not that convinced by knight G5 here and D5. It seems like I don't have time for C4 like I would normally have. You can just play like D takes C4. I'm not really sure about my position there. So knight E5 seems like the better try. But maybe alternatively I could play D5, E takes F3, takes on D6, but that's not really great. I mean, you don't want to have to take back with the E pawn in a kind of position. So with having played G3, I think this option of like D5 that you'd see in Alekhines defense or something like that is not really good. I really have to play. Knight E5 is probably the best move, though I don't think white has an opening advantage here. I think it's probably equal. Welcome everyone to my Weird Wednesday stream. I'm playing unusual openings. Here we have the reversed Alekhine Scandinavian mix with G3. I don't think that white objectively keeps an opening advantage, but we do get interesting positions. Another opening on the same lines I've seen recently is like C4, E5, knight F3. There's a very strong Russian Grandmaster Rachmanov who's been playing that quite a bit with white. c4, e5, knight f3, e4, knight d4. Also objectively not dangerous for black, but people get confused. They don't know like any theory. They don't know what to do. Queen f6 a la Scotch. I guess I just have to take on c6. I hate to take on c6 because he takes with the d pawn. So he can take either way. Queen f6 is a good move, apparently. Certainly okay. I can't give up the pawn. Knight g4 loses a pawn. f4 is sort of dubious. Bishop f4 just looks random. We have no opening advantage at all here. And actually this also is okay because he's reinforcing toward the center. I'm not really sure the significance of the queen being on f6 here. I wonder if it's even worth it playing c4 if he can just reinforce it with like d5, and exchanging on d5 just undoubles his pawns. I wonder if I could try to play like f3 at some point. Structurally, f3 might make some sense. Because c4, which is the typical plan, just kind of trades off his double pawn. Although here, his development is a little weird with the queen on f6. The queen is getting in the way of the best square of the knight. And the big question now is, do I interpose with the bishop or the knight? Trading off my bad bishop. Probably not. This bishop's pretty good on its original square. I think the bishop is badly placed. He doesn't really want to give up his dark square bishop, does he? Maybe he can give it up and play for white squares. Give it up and play for white squares, I guess. This whole plan of queen f6 is a little bit unusual, but I guess it's not so bad. This knight comes to e7, or maybe even h6. Wow, Plucro is the only person chatting in the stream. Why is nobody else chatting? I thought this bishop e6 is a bit of a strange move, and I don't know that I made the best response. Queen a4 here may have been better. I don't know if I was afraid of queen takes d4 or what. Black's position seems to be melting down pretty quickly. White's probably close to lost here. White, black, whatever. Guys, thanks for joining me here. International Master William Paschall. We are playing Weird Wednesday when we play unusual openings. This is a reversed Alekhine or Alekhine, how you prefer. And C takes d5. We have queen a4 check. c4. Bishop a3. Rook b1. Lots of tempting moves. Looks like he's going to get to castle. Yeah, if queen a4, bishop d7 was forced, probably. Monkey Debiel says I'm not chatting because I search for weird openings to play against you. Only one of us really has to play a weird opening. You don't have to like respond to the weird opening with more weirdness. And it doesn't have to be extremely unusual. As I said, just something unusual to me. Like, I don't normally play the Dutch defense. For many people, that's a standard opening. And the Birds opening, for example, for a moderator, Jeroen, he's always playing that. But if it's unusual for you or for me, then it counts. Just something different to kind of spice it up. So we're not playing the same openings day in and day out. And I think there's a lot to be learned by playing different kind of positions. It's very important. I don't recommend you spend your whole life playing one opening system. You become very dull and uncreative. I don't think black should spend too much time on this move. I guess he does have some issues with his center. It's going to be hard to maintain the center. Excuse me. These guys, we're going to lever those pawns with a c4 at some point. He also has issues with castling. I also talked about f3, which is another way of attacking. Where did black go wrong here? Well, bishop d7. Interesting. He's lateral mobility with the queen. That may well be a good idea. I don't have too much time to debate. I like queen b3. I get the b file, threatening a key pawn in the center. The one downside is that I take away defensive d4, so is there a trick here? Well, the central pawn is too important. He should be lost, dropping that pawn. Where did black go wrong in this game? Well, there are a lot of things we could discuss. I think that everything is pretty okay until queen f6 is experimental, knight takes c6. Simpler to take with the d pawn in this position. Developing the bishop on c8. But after b takes, bishop g2, d5, c4, black's development is a little bit congested because of the queen on f6. That's why he started having problems. I got reconnecting. Lichess update is in progress. So while it's updating, what else can we suggest? I mean, bishop b4 check's a little bit weird because that's his good bishop. I mean, this bishop is the guardian of the dark squares, so he doesn't really want to trade that off. But let's say that's okay. Knight c3. This is where he started to go downhill completely. I don't think there's any need for bishop e6 here, Mule Skinner. I mean, that bishop could even be very valuable coming to a6 later on. So it doesn't know where it wants to go. Black should play knight e7 in this position. Defending c6. I guess after 97. Maybe I should just refresh the page here. It's down. So after 97, I have queen a4, or c takes d. So you have an interesting defense there with the knight in e7, because even if on the next move I play c takes d5, your queen is on f6, and queen a4 check, attacking your bishop on b4, can be defended by the move knight to c6. So perhaps I'm threatening nothing in that position after knight e7. That was, the bishop e6 was a really badly timed move. The knight must be developed. Let's think about it in terms of, just like logic and process of elimination. The knight must be developed. You have to castle, get out of the center. Whereas the bishop on c8, it can wait, and as I said many times in these kind of structures, like in a Nimzo or the French, the bishop on c1 or c8, it's the Winnower French, the Nimzo Indian, bishop on c1. You haven't played a6, so you have, or a3 if you're white in a Nimzo, or the Winnower. You have the ability to play bishop c1 to a3, as I did, or bishop a6, bishop c8, a6. Let's hope this doesn't last, guys. So while we're waiting, there it is. I don't think we're going to find many games here, guys. Oh no! Oh no! Rockport Ricard, 2 games. I didn't even know. I'm copying good old Ricky. Of course, who else would play this, right? e4. And there's no Rockport games. Everybody took on d4. Okay, e4 is a more aggressive move. And then queen f6 is a new move, according to the lichess. Well, it's a limited database. I mean, you have to check like ChessBase or something for more information. But Stefan Kinderman this is an old game from 1982. Okay, he was like a teenager or something. 1982, the young Stefan Kinderman played knight on g to e7. And our opponent played queen f6. Anyway, guys, let's get back to the challenges here. Milan Cry. Oh, we are white again. I'm going to play e4. Try something different. We played hyper-modern chess last game, but I'm not going to do that every single game. Let's try something more classical. Milan Cry. Crawl played b6. Ah, the good old Owen's defense. We've had a lot of games in the Owen defense, or Owen's defense. The Reverend John Owens. Owen. The Reverend John Owen, a 19th century, late 19th century. When did he live? Like late 1800s, right? He might have survived into the 1900s. I don't remember his exact. Maybe I'm a little bit off. It doesn't really matter. Anyway, bishop d3. Some sort of British reverend who was quite a competent chess player. First popularized b6. But I noticed that the other player who played this was Gunsberg, who I mentioned in this position. I found a couple of games with g6 from actually like 1883 or something like that. Milan Cry, this is a much more classical interpretation of the position, which Owen would have played himself, I guess. He wasn't a particularly strong player, but revolutionary, and not too many people in those days, 150 years ago, were playing like hyper-modern chess. So this is the move I prefer, queen e2. Delaying the knight. We had one of our regular players. I was black last week, or maybe 2 weeks ago, and I faced knight d2. I rarely ever play this with black, but I thought I'd try it on a Wednesday, and my opponent played knight d2. I think the knight shouldn't commit itself to d2 too early. Now knight f6. I think I would probably play c5 first, but knight f6 seems okay. Though I could think about e5. The g2 pawn is a question. I guess there's nothing special here. Whenever I play the Owen versus you, you always say the St. George is better. Yeah, maybe I'm just biased. It's not necessarily better. I mean, I like it better, personally, but it has its drawbacks. I mean, the b5 pawn is kind of vulnerable to attack with a4, so... Maybe we don't say it's better. Maybe we should just say it's more active or something. A different description would be appropriate. It's more active. But Milan Kraj is playing this kind of passively. I mean, I should be able to play e5 at some moment with advantage. On the other hand, there's no reason I have to play it immediately. This is probably pretty standard. I have a problem with my other machine that it just goes to sleep. I never changed its settings, but it's been going to sleep. Someone changed the sleep setting on it. It just, if you don't like do anything for 30 seconds, the thing turns itself off. So e5 here, knight d5, queen e4, g6 is interesting. I could play queen g4 there. I'm not sure. I'm going to think about this. Yeah, I just have a personal favoritism toward the St. George. But that was what Tony Miles said. Michael Bassman. I think I had a pamphlet by Bassman where he advocated, I guess he's still alive, he advocated the St. George. A3, knight on bd2, but I feel like knight on bd2 is kind of early here. And then finally e5. e5, knight d5, a3 there. It could be hard for me to develop my knight if I do that. I'll just play standard. I'm wasting a lot of time, but I don't see e5, knight d5, queen e4, g6, queen g4 as anything special. Playable. It looks a little premature to start some kind of adventure like that. A3 seems to neglect the center a bit. And other moves like rook e1 or rook d1. I like knight d2 because it controls the e4 square, discouraging like d5, e5, knight e4. Okay, so now rook placement is probably fairly relevant here. Maybe with this particular formation, I'm going to prefer rook d1 to the kind of like classical rook e1. But maybe I should have just played e5 again. This position is very, very sort of similar to the c3 Sicilian. e5, knight d5. I think I'm being too fancy here. Why can't I move? That's why, the mysterious. The only drawback is he can trade some pawns. This should be good for white, though. Or maybe not. It should be okay. I mean, the other route is slow. You know, knight f1 and knight g3. This way is much better. My knight goes through e4. The downside is that the pawn structure gets fixed and it's symmetrical. But the positive side is that he's got no exchanges of pieces and he's pretty cramped. He was threatening knight f4 there, so look out. Looks like a good position, but again, symmetrical position. There are not a lot of dynamic things to do when you have the symmetrical pawn structure in place. Normally I would prefer a more imbalanced kind of situation. Do you think that someone who starts playing chess at the age of 20 plus years old, does he stand a chance of becoming an IM or a GM? Well, I think that the IM is definitely possible. I can personally attest to that fact. Not that I was starting chess at that age, but just in general. I mean, the titles have become easier to achieve than they were at one time. If it was like 20 years ago, I would be less inclined to say yes, because the requirements were a little more strict. But now, this is just lost for black, I guess, immediately because of the weakness of e6. The GM title is hard to do. I mean, I think you have to be a brilliant, you'd have to be a brilliant player in person to pull off GM after starting 20 plus, but it's certainly possible. You'd have to devote yourself or just be an absolute genius. If you had enough resources and you're very bright, I don't see why it can't be done. I would certainly be able to do it if I had unlimited resources. I should have done it. I should have made GM, but I ended up like spending 10 years focusing on poker instead of chess. But we have to feed ourselves and live, so you make your decisions. Arthur Bisgeyer says, what this like carnival quote, like, you pay your money and you take your choice. Or as Arthur Bisgeyer says, you pays your money and you takes your choice, right? So we only get to live once, I guess, theoretically, most likely. But I don't see, I'm not one to discourage people. I don't see why it's not possible to get to GM even at the age of 20. I'm not one of these like bitter people who's like, oh, you can't do it, you know. I had a student who was like a teenager, went to a chess club, and first time goes there, and all these old dudes were like discouraging him. You'll never become a title player because you're starting when you're 15, it's too old. I encountered the same kind of negative sentiment when I was... You would meet some people who are like bitter, and they don't think that you can do it, or they're jealous, and they're... Everything's good here. But I guess knight takes h7. Theoretically, maybe I had bishop takes h7 followed by queen h5. I was too distracted. Bishop takes h7, king here, queen h5. Queen takes f2 check. I was just scared of stuff like queen takes g2 there. You guys want to see this for a second? What does the computer choose? Yes, bishop takes h7. I was scared of like queen takes f2 check. Does this work? Oh no, it's just made on f1. I totally... Why did I not see that it's made on f1? That's strange. Anyway. Alright. f6, crazy move. Why would Kirai do that? His position is a little passive and he's afraid of knight g5. What to recommend for black instead? Well, that's why the Owens defense is tough. You know, it's hard to find moves. Zen chess. You don't say I don't think so till you only live once. I'm not sure. I've never died yet, so, or maybe I have. Knight f3. Wanted to try something interesting, but it's going to be hard if white plays something quiet. Like, let's say I play knight c6, and he plays bishop c4. I mean, I played the Latvian before here, but it's really unsound. Latvian's just too unsound. Bishop c4. I wanted to play the Schliemann, man, but you played bishop c4. What am I supposed to do now? Unusual openings. This is like the most usual of openings. Now I have to play, what am I going to do? I don't know anything. I mean, I don't have any unusual opening to play here, Zen chess. f5. I know there are probably romantic players who played that, but it's not looking too reasonable. What am I gonna do, guys, for an unusual opening? We've got the most usual opening, Zen chess. You're like a guy who plays the London system. Once in a while we get these guys who play the London system on the weird opening day. That's the antithesis of weird openings. I'm trying to think of something here to do, but you know, if you played knight g5, you would at least play along with the theme. You know, there I could do the Traxler variation with bishop c5. The after castles, what am I supposed to do? You're going to play a gambit, maybe. Well, if one game isn't an unusual opening, that's all we have to do. We have to live with it, and there's nothing that can be done. He did play knight c3. This is an interesting gambit. Does anybody know what this is called, incidentally? After knight c3. Knight takes c3. Alright. You guys, I would normally play knight f6 here. Is that right? Something doesn't seem right about this. Yeah, knight f6, rook e1. Does that seem right? He's already castled though. Maybe you're castled too early or what? Knight f6, rook e1. Yeah, I guess that's... What do I normally do here? Come to think of it. I've had this position against my friend I guess it was knight f6, rook e1, d5. Knight takes e5, knight takes e5, rook takes e5, check. That doesn't make sense either. How could it have gone? I don't know. But we'll let Zen Chess have some fun, just for the sake of the stream here. I'm thinking that this is the move. And you guys may say, well, why would you do that? Besides enabling like castle's queenside, the most important thing is to play knight d8. I've never actually done this or played this line in my life. I would normally decline this pawn sacrifice, but I thought in the spirit of weird opening theme, we need to go into this gambit variation. Yeah, bishop e7, Plutcrow. I'm just thinking, I don't really want to let him play like knight takes c6 and double my pawn. So, okay, bishop e7, knight takes e5, knight takes e5, rook takes e5. Then I'm dropping a pawn on d5. That's what I'm getting confused about. I shouldn't drop a pawn on d5. Now this is theory, Zen Chess. I don't know it, you don't know it. I don't know if the viewers know it, but I recall this is probably the key line. Not too many people know this variation. Besides not using your services for your move to Hungary, our services, what is your biggest regret in life? Well, I have a few. Too many to name. It'd be too difficult, beacons moving in storage. Too difficult to decide between them. Obviously, not becoming a chess grandmaster is probably one of them. Is in the top several. If we say to this topic of chess, then that's definitely number one. I always get sidetracked with other stuff. Rook e1. I think I could still become a GM though. If I hit the lottery, have complete financial independence, I could probably do it in 5 years. Rook e1. Yeah, this might be the right move. One of the things to keep in mind here is that he would like to play f4, but he can't because of queen c5 check, picking up the bishop on c4. That's a huge problem with white's ability to generate more pressure in this position. Yeah, but I doubt objectively this is really enough for white. The pawn center is really solid, so I think that the position is hard for white to prove. He has enough compensation for a pawn. I'm not saying it's good for white, I'm just saying this is what I know. Rook e1 I'm not too sure about, but it's interesting. I don't know if I should even attack his knight. Not really doing any damage where it's at right now. Though f4 does seem right. Though f6, I should play f6. The knight will recirculate to a good square, but at the same time, I can challenge his bishop on c4, which I think that should be probably a major priority in this position for black. Why can't you become a GM? Well, it's a lot of work. I have to gain 100 ELO points, and I have to make 3 GM norms. So I'm not saying I can't. It's just a question of commitment. I think I can. But too many responsibilities make it difficult for middle-aged people to become grandmasters. F takes e5 appears to be a mistake for white. You really shouldn't, unless you have a tactical shock here, really shouldn't exchange releasing the tension. Giving my queen the c5 square, potentially giving my rook like the d file. Yes, you could argue white is a little better developed, but this is just a classic exchange or release of the tension that I think I could also take with the f pawn, but that's kind of dangerous with queen coming to h5. I want to open this up. I don't know, Zen chess shouldn't exchange on e5. That seems like a strange move. Why? You know, why exchange on e5? I don't see any real benefit for white. You open up this bishop with 2 additional squares on g5 and h6. Don't give up the tension unless you have a reason to do so. Maybe he has a reason, it hasn't hit me yet. Knight e4. A bishop on c4 is too good. It has to go. White shouldn't really have enough comp here. Any endgame is lost for white now. 4 on 2 kingside majority, up a pawn. $100 in that ELO is one hell of a grind skill gap. I'm just really angry with myself because I got to like 2475 unofficially, and 10 years ago or 12 years ago, and all I needed to do was get to 2500. So I was just really overconfident, and I just didn't, you know, I didn't even think there was a question that I would get to 2500. So I didn't even care, you know, about playing like recklessly at that time, and ended up being a huge mistake. If I had just grinded out another 25 rating points, I never would have had to worry about it. So it was a big practical mistake not to appreciate my ELO when I had it up to like 2470 plus. I should have taken care of it, you know, and I've never been one to like protect my rating really. Like some people will count every point, you know. I was just running, so to speak, like running really well, and I didn't expect it to stop, but certain crazy things happened in my life, and we can't predict the future. Now what? I'm running out of time. Zen chess has a little bit of compensation. I don't want the knight to come to c5. I guess we can play b6. Yes, I'm weakening the white squares. He has bishop b5 check, but I don't see anything for white there after bishop d7. He either has it or he doesn't. You know, there's no in between. It's either strong or it's not. So I didn't really protect my rating when I had the chance, which was a big mistake. Now it's a lot of points to grind, 100 points. Exactly. I need to play a lot, and I don't really have time to play a lot. You know, maybe a couple tournaments a year and team championship. So I have to run really well to get my rating up. Not to mention that there have been other changes and stuff to the rating system that are really not in my favor. this huge check on c6. There's like an absolutely absurd rule now that people under a certain age have a different K factor than other players, which creates rating inflation. There's no reason for people of different ages to have different K factors. Well, queen c1, I'm kind of happy to see that, blocking in your heavy pieces. Why not queen e2? He wants to control g5, I assume. Looks like I'm just winning now. g6, bishop g7, castles kingside. "28 seconds left." Does anybody know what the name of this is again? This gambit? What is the K factor? Good question. I was going to amend that comment with, like, if you know anything about, like, or care about the ELO chess rating system. A K factor is like a multiplier by which you determine people's ratings. I'm not really a mathematician, although at one time I knew a little bit. To put it in layman's terms, they made this rule that makes it so that young players' ratings change more quickly than other players. But this is a totally arbitrary and pretty bogus concept introduced to artificially raise the ratings of younger players more quickly. There's absolutely no reason for that to be done. The young players who are good should increase their ratings naturally at their own speed. It's unfair to the other players. Now, on the other hand, you could say, well, maybe those young players are getting artificially rated, you know, increased ratings, and you can benefit by playing them and then taking the points off of them. That's probably true. You know, I can beat some overrated kids and take their points back. So what's the big deal? But still, why do schemes have to be introduced, you know, to artificially mess with a perfectly good perfectly good rating system? Politics is at the heart of everything. Okay, Zen Chess is just trying to, like, play on time here, but he's a pawn down with a lost position based on this protected passed pawn on e4. Yeah, I was aware of bishop d4, but you're just trading pieces here, probably good for me, ultimately. I can almost predict his moves. I can't do that with everyone. There's certain players who have kind of tendency toward playing unusual moves. This was a feisty move, queen d3, queen e3. I didn't know Zen Chess was such a blitz player. Oh, I just did that. He missed mate in one. Basically, I just got blitz in a winning position, but whatever. Not really interesting to me to lose like that. That's not chess, that's just playing for time. But good technique. Knight to c3 here would be my next move, but I tried to make 2 moves in a row. No, I don't like playing like super fast blitz here on the stream. I'm trying to like do this for instructive purposes. So when it gets down to like the blitz 3 seconds per move, I get a little bit like I'm not interested in just playing blitz for like trying to flag the other guy. That's fine when it's like blitz and we're not trying to do a stream or something, but I don't really care. If I lose on time in a winning position, it's okay. I just blundered. Sold to ego, sacrificed a pawn here with like a reverse kind of Smith-Morra. That's interesting. I don't think I should play knight c3 here. I guess I should play d4. Given the opportunity to play d4. Maybe it's better to play d4. So I don't really care if we like lose on time in a good position or something. Not the main focus. Here we have a reverse Smith-Morra, but I mean bishop b4 probably not great because the bishop goes to c5, has lasting pressure on f2. So I would think I could play a fianchetto here, dragon type of setup with the bishop on b4 that wouldn't normally be viable against bishop c5. The Gladys Troll is a kind of perverse comment. I like to watch people's faces when they lose. Well, Gladys Troll, that's really heartwarming. You also like to watch them writhe and die on the street when someone like stabs them, right? Knight d4. Well, losing is different from getting outplayed. I'm not really trying to play for the time, so that's another thing. If I wanted to play for time, I can, but then I wouldn't be commentating, and it would be a different stream altogether. Bishop g4, wow. I don't really want to do it, but I think I have to exchange on d4 here and let him take with the pawn and simplify. He has a pawn down here for basically nothing. I was a little irritated by the last game, maybe just with myself, you know. But just constantly 3 seconds, 3 seconds, 3 seconds, 3 seconds, 3 seconds. It can be kind of like the game goes on forever. Alright, rook c8. Castle's here. That's why I choose not to do rated games, because I'm at a huge disadvantage. I'm telling stories, talking about totally unrelated topics like Weekend A, while I'm trying to play a blitz game with somebody here, and we're at a pretty serious disadvantage. So don't be too proud if you beat me on time. Stay on page. How do I get rid of this? God. There. Alright. Queen e7. But beat me on the board, you know. That ending against Zen chess was totally okay for black initially, till I just started running out of time. 4 pawns against 2 on the king side. Even after I lost the exchange, I probably shouldn't lose. Queen e7. It's not you guys need to take more time and try to play good moves. This is another lost position for black, where he played very quickly. Why not take more time? I think a lot of players, the problem is they're just addicted to playing blitz. That's all they do is play blitz here, and they can't change speeds. 8-3 game, you're like down a pawn after a few moves. There's a little bit of compensation, but I don't think it's anything serious. In fact, maybe I should play e3 and just be done with it. How about knight takes f6, queen takes f6, rook takes c8, rook takes c8, rook c1. He does have this lasting, irritating kind of compensation here. Another interesting move is queen g5, pinning his knight. But unfortunately, black can play bishop takes e2 there. But I just don't think that the blitz, just playing blitz, is good for your game. You need to play longer games. Rook takes c1. Rook takes c8 check. Rook c1. Rook takes c1. Queen takes c1. I can take on f6 first. But again, it's just like playing. I feel like my opponents are just playing for time. The only priority is to play for time. No thinking, just time. It just goes counter to what I'm trying to do here. To teach people to play quality chess and take their time and make good moves. Queen g5, bishop takes e2. Almost has some tactics. But objectively, everything's winning for white. Even rook e1. Rook c1. He could take with a g pawn on f6. Knight takes f6, g takes. How about e3? It's another winning move. You know who's playing well in this weekend's A tournament? Elyanov. But it's not a player I really like. The last game was like exceedingly typical of him, like very, very technical. Who was that? Who's been following the weekend's A? Timed out for 10, reason ban. Bullet addiction, you might as well just quit. Here Black has a little bit of compensation, unfortunately. I didn't want to give him anything. You know, he should really be like a pure pawn down. But this is Weird Wednesday. I do encourage unusual openings. So the Smith-Morrow reversed. Not sound, but what about my choice here of playing like knight c3? If I have the option to play d4, I'm not sure though. Probably best. Although I have to meet bishop g4 there with like a very quiet move e3. Maybe given the ability to play d4, I should think about doing it. No, then Black has different ideas, maybe bishop f5 or something, but the only thing I regret about this game is not playing d4 straight away. Bishop f6. That's a strange move. You have to admit that bishop e6 is a strange move. Okay, the bishop is misplaced at g4. So I trade pieces and play a3. Not to weaken the dark square c3. You don't want to play b3 here. Guys, thank you for joining me. We do have a YouTube channel, Video Chess Training, where I upload the games from the stream and also upload other videos that I create for various topics. Instructional videos, openings, and whatnot. I'm getting a little bored of like every player playing for time though. We have this happen sometimes in my simul, so I feel like everyone's teaming up against me to play for time. Just insta moves, every move. Why don't you take some time to think a little bit about your moves? Actually, trading pawns and playing queen c3 probably wins immediately. I could just win a second pawn here. This is like resignable, no? Elyanov would love this. So, I mean, I'm going to win a second pawn or force a trade of queens, which should force a bishop endgame, which should be winning for white. At 4 minutes, there's no reason not to think, you know? I really understand. People play too much blitz here. I think the blitz should be like a training tool, but other people just can't slow down. Increase time or increment. Well, it wouldn't really matter, would it? Because everybody would just play the game in 2 minutes. It doesn't matter if I give them 10 minutes or 20 minutes. They still play the entire game in like 2 minutes. It would help me a little bit. But then we only get to play like 4 games per stream, so it's not really enough. But never ever go into a bishop endgame when you're down a pawn, unless like last resort. Knight endgames are even worse. If it's a rook endgame or a queen endgame, you have good chances to draw usually when you're down a pawn. But minor piece endgames tend not to be draws. Every little advantage is really magnified. This is hopeless for black. Well, he could win on time, but other than that... Of course, if you're talking about opposite colored bishop position, that's a different story. I guess he wants to go with his king on c5 here. Should I bother? He could go king c5, king b5, king a4. That does concern me a little bit. I don't want him walking over there to attack my a pawn. He's got a lot of pawns stuck on the white squares here on the king side. Under no circumstances should black be able to draw this. Is your name the same as it is here? Maybe I'll make... What are you guys talking about? Sorry. Gladys Troll. He likes to watch people suffer. b5, putting more pawns on white squares. This is absolutely not a good idea. Unless there's some way he could block the entire position, which I kind of doubt. And don't lose on time. All these are fixed on white squares as well. Guys, we have time for at least 3 more games. He's going for my a pawn again. I just chose the dark square because he might have a check with king c2 at some point. That could be a useful move. It doesn't really matter if I go. Bishop d7. Well, let's play h5. It's another weakness. Like black should eventually run out of moves. he's enjoying this. If he had put his pawns on dark squares in the beginning of this ending, it would have been a lot harder for me to win. You know, I still think I would be winning, because it's a clear pawn up. Opposite colored bishops is another story, but the same colored bishops. If he had put the h6 pawn on the h pawn on h6, g5, f6, that type of structure, this endgame would have been much harder for me to win. Lazy Mr. challenged me to 5-2. If you could please re-challenge me to 5-3. I don't think our moderator is here today. Have you made more money playing tournaments or cash games? For those of you who don't understand, the guy's asking me about poker. I did play a lot of poker over the last 10 years. But now I'm only playing live occasionally. DST, I'm not really a cash game player. I think I've told you that before. So there's really no question there. Lazy M8er, if you could re-challenge me to 5+2, I don't think I've won too much money playing cash. I mean, yes, I'm live, but not significant amounts. Constant Change is the next one up, 8-3. So if we're talking about poker, I like poker tournaments because the dynamics are different. You know, there are more variables when you play tournament poker as opposed to just sitting in a cash game and just, you know, doing the same thing over and over and over again. And if you play online, it's very monotonous. I find cash to be very monotonous. E4. We promised to do an unusual opening stream, and we're going to play different stuff. So we've played Constant Change like 38 games. He knows most of my repertoire. Playing for time. Take your time. Yeah, your score, Constant Change, if he used his time, his score, I think his score would be something like 31-12 instead of 31-6.5. But he plays very quickly. And he's won some games, but I think his score would be double if he used all his time. Thinking about what to play here. Unusual openings. Let's play the Alekhines defense. I do play this occasionally, but I'm no expert, you know, so it's kind of a fun opening for me that I don't know that much theory. Now knight c3 is a kind of problem. d5 is the only really dynamic move to play against that, which transposes to like e4, d5, knight c3. It's basically several different openings. I mean, it's the Dunst opening, it's the Scandinavian, and I'm not going to risk any kind of gambit like my last opponent. You could play the Smith-Morra type of thing with, like, it's not really sound. White hasn't played c4, weakened his pawns in any way. We have to play knight takes d5 here. What was the biggest field you played live? Officially quitting tournaments and just going to stick with cash games. Played 4 tournaments in person today. Well, I played primarily very large online tournaments, DST, but poker is in trouble. There is no trend toward poker now like it was 10 years ago. Poker is not fashionable as it was. And that is one of the main reasons why I stopped playing. Knight to f3, not playing entirely, but playing full time. The fashion of poker has died completely due to many factors. People just aren't playing poker anymore like they were. It was a huge fashion. It was covered on TV. It's completely gone out of fashion. I don't play a lot live. I don't know what the biggest field I played in. Not too big. I just played in Prague. In the EPT Eureka High Roller, there were like 1,000 players I played in. But I don't really like massive fields of. I can imagine the World Series of Poker is like a chaos with all those people there. I mean, let's see. All right, Bishop G4 is the move I usually play in this position. You know, I'm not sure it would be fun to play like the World Series, the main event, with like 10,000 people in the room. You know, that just doesn't really like appeal to me as a particularly fun thing to do. Maybe when I was younger, but tempting to play knight to f4 in this position, but it's time consuming. Black doesn't develop the pieces. I think giving up the bishop on e2 is reasonable for white. So that's one thing that I've talked about quite a bit recently, bishops versus knights. I've kind of changed my whole philosophy about the value of bishops versus knights. I used to overvalue the bishop pair, and I think in recent times I've come to appreciate the reality of the situation. You know, many of us overvalue bishops fairly frequently. In relatively closed positions, the knights are just as good. Koalu says the biggest problem is that people are much stronger players now due to online practicing. Well, this is true in both poker and chess. But in poker, there's more than one problem. There's just not as many players as there used to be. And of course, online, people are getting better more quickly. The golden days of online poker are long gone. Here, we have to watch out for c4 d5 type of ideas in this Caro-Kann type of structure. So I want to play e6. I was thinking about queen c7, but it's kind of early to play that. So I want to ensure that d5, c4 and d5 don't happen. This is an aggressive and interesting move by Constant Change. He said he's going to not play for time, but he's not exactly playing slowly. Anyway, I'm talking about poker. I want to concentrate on the game here. Not have conversations about poker right now. This guy is a particularly difficult opponent for me, and usually I'm in time pressure anyway. So I'm going to avoid distracting side conversations while I concentrate on the game here. I'm not like claustrophobic, but I don't think I'd enjoy like 10,000 people in the same room. c4, knight f6. The largest chess tournament I've ever played in is probably like the World Open or New York Open. quite a few players in those, but nothing rivaling like the World Series of Poker, I guess. All right. Europe doesn't really have these big opens the way the New York Open and the World Open in the United States attracted so many players. I guess like Capel in France is very big. Speaking of large playing fields in a competitive event. Anyway, I've talked about this type of position recently, and black doesn't have to do anything. I don't think that the breaking with like c5 or e5 is even necessarily useful. This space grab with a5 is fairly useful, I think. A4, a3, maybe possible getting some grip on the dark squares. But black doesn't have to be like going out of his way to play c5 or e5 as if like I had a bishop on c8 that was blocked in or something. So this is a typical situation that I've argued about. I find it difficult to play with white, you know. He has this bishop that's just not that great. This bishop on c1, what does it do? You know, it doesn't really have a function. The d4 pawn is stuck on a dark square, and I think it's just hard for white to get more than equality in this type of position. If anybody has a good idea for how white gets better than equality, let me know. I hope I didn't offer a draw by accident. Swap for Prez, yeah, it's absolutely like pretty normal, pretty equal, and typical Caro-Kann type of thing. Bishop f4, I swear I think I've had the same game with this guy before. I don't have to play a4, but looks like a good move anyway. There are other prophylactic moves I could do, I guess. Rook e8. Rook e8 is pretty good. Ultimately, playing b5 would be a plan for black, but the bishop on f3 kind of kills that. But as I mentioned before, constant change, he's awful strong, you know, for a guy who has this low blitz rating, and even worse in bullet. And he's awfully fast. You know, I just don't see why his blitz rating is not like 2200, you know. Constant change, I don't think you've ever really explained it. Why are you not like 2200 in blitz here? I mean, I know a lot of players who are weaker than you who are like over 2200 in blitz on lichess. That's why I say that so often, you know. Do you get nervous in time pressure? It seems like you play fast, but when you actually get in time pressure yourself, sometimes you make mistakes. And that may just be nerves. Not liking to be in time pressure yourself. So in any case, bishop f8. This looks like a safe square for the bishop. I was a little worried about, you know, d5, knight f5 coming in. I like the way white has played this, though. Look. Fixing my pawn on a4. Putting his bishops on the best possible squares. This I don't like. Okay, it's not terrible for white. But now, yeah, we had a similar game, it seems to me, constant change, not that long ago. Rook a7 is my default move here. He never gives me time to think. You know, a lot of people are always like, it's such a long time control, 8-3. There goes my other engine, computer turning off. I don't know what I did to it, but it's got like a 30 seconds. Every 30 seconds it like puts itself on sleep or something. Really irritating. All right. So guys, if anybody's interested in chess lessons, send me an email, videochesstrainer@gmail.com. We have the YouTube channel, Video Chess Training on YouTube, where I do upload all the streams. If you guys hang out here, want to see the end of a stream you started watching, It's usually uploaded that day to my YouTube channel. You can also find them on Twitch, which saves them for a couple weeks. Rook A7. I don't know, but B3. The sequence here, B3, A3, and then B3. He leaves himself with the worst structure, but he does get A4 in. I don't really want him to play A5, I guess. Dark square bishop exchange would be interesting. Queen B6 is possible. He is using his time. Queen B6, Queen A5. Notice the bad knight on G3. Always bad. Knights on G3. One of my songs that I constantly sing. Just have to be a little careful here tactically. I mean, I have to watch out. You know, there is like bishop skewering my knight and rook, and I'm on the d4 pawn. So that's not really a threat. This doesn't win material. No, it does win material. I forgot my queen was protected. I was just like getting the grip on the dark squares. I didn't even realize I was going to win material here. My only statement on this game is that I've been in this kind of position with white a million times, and I find it very hard to find a plan, you know. I think until A3 it's okay, but what do? You know, like play D5 and like liquidate everything and make a draw? Play knight E4, trade pieces, draw? Probably he should play knight E4 and trade the knights and then try to get some kind of advantage, but then I have more space and my bishop can go to F6. It's you know, it's just really hard to do anything for white. You know, that's the whole basis of this kind of defense, where you get this Caro-Kann type pawn structure. Knight on G3, that's kind of useless. This dark squared bishop, that's not all that good. And I guess I can just trade here, take a rook. Alternatively, Queen A5 is good. This way we get a pawn and the exchange. But my only real fault with constant change plans would be debatable if B3 is a good idea or not. Maybe he shouldn't play A3 at all. Just keep maximum flexibility with the pawns and play like knight E4. But you know, on the other hand, I've been there in that position with white so many times. I don't know how to get an advantage either. All right. Well, my rook is hanging, my knight, but we're picking up this guy, we're picking up the pawn on d4, or he's just giving me that. Okay. Well, all right. Okay, guys, we have time for 2 more games. Vasilikos and Chesaturko. 7-5. I do allow this time control. It's kind of, my whole system for determining time controls is sort of random, but we have to draw the line somewhere. I don't allow 8-5 because it's our maximum base time with the maximum increment, but 7-5 is acceptable. I played G3 today. Let's play an F4, a bird's opening. We could also play the King's Gambit if black plays E5. We play E4. Talking about knight to C3 instead of G3. Yeah, in general, it's a better square. Okay, E6. Yeah, I mean, I think that E6 is a solid move if you play French type positions. E4, not a great French, you know, with the move F4 so early. So I think we're gonna play some sort of hyper-modern setup here. Knight F3 or B3. Maybe B3 is bad tactically because of Queen F6. That's when our moderator Jeroen would. There, I guess you have B3, D4. It's pretty ugly. Let's play Knight F3. This has got to be the best move for white. We might get a kind of passive setup. In I have mentioned the game Lasker-Bauer, which was this famous game where Emanuel Lasker sacrificed 2 bishops on the king's side on G7 and H7 in a Nimzo-Larsen. Nimzo-Larsen is basically like F4, B3 setups for white. Once again here, he has the ability to play like Queen F6, so I'm not sure about like B3, Queen F6. D4 would be an ugly move for white to play there. Now we can play B3. And if Queen F6, maybe Knight C3 or something like that. So the Nimzo-Larsen, Queen's Indian type of position. I think I had a game like this last week. Something very similar. And now with C5, what we have is effectively like a Dutch reversed, as if it was like D4, F5. B3 is natural, not the only way for white to play. Bishop B5 check. Or Bishop E2. Bishop E2 is kind of passive for white. I like B3. Nimzovich type of setup. Nimzovichian, we might say. Now, if he played Queen F6, I would have a lot of moves. I mean, Knight E5, Bishop, Knight C3. So I don't think that tricky idea is not good anymore. He needs to play. He needs to play classical chess here. So Knight F6, Knight C6. Even A6 is an idea to stop the bishop from deploying on B5. I've often played that myself. I'm not sure I really like it in combination with E6 though, because E6 is kind of passive for black. Now Bishop B5. How effective is Bishop B5 objectively in this type of position? Classical Nimzo-Indian. Bishop B5. Trade on C6. We could wait a move and see what he's going to do. Perhaps with Bishop to B2. Might give us the option of Bishop A3 in some positions, if black does something fancy like knight e7, maybe bishop a3 would borrow an idea from the Nimzo Indian. If he does something like weird to inhibit his defense of c5, we might have an alternative to bishop b2. DST, I think that people not paying money back is not only New Zealanders have a tendency to not pay money back. I think it's an international trend. Don't lend money to poker players or any kind of people involved in any sort of gambling. I've learned that the hard way. Bishop takes c6. Maybe the best policy is not to loan money to anybody under any circumstances. So it's a Nimzo Indian with colors reversed, same-ish variation, with a quiet e6. However, I have played f5 fairly early. I want to blockade the c-pawns, if possible here. Maybe it's not that important, though. This is a bad piece. Bishop on c8. It's probably the most important strategic concept in this position. That is a bad piece. My old mentor, Roman Djindjiashvili, this was probably his favorite concept, playing both the black side of the Nimzo Indian and the white side of the Grand Prix attack. For example, he would love to kill this bishop, make it like a non-entity, and also like the Djindji Indian. Make it a non-entity, and he just win the game. I mean, it's like black's just playing a piece down, if you can kill this piece. Of course, the doubled pawns is kind of a bonus. But the really more important concept is killing the bishop pair in general, and particularly this one, because it's so blocked in. Especially after a6. If not for a6, you have bishop a6. I'm sure you guys can see that, but pointing it out to the more beginner players in the stream, probably worthwhile. So now, knight f6. I'm not committing myself to bishop b2 right away. I mentioned earlier, bishop a3 might be a superior deployment. We're just gonna wing it, I guess. This position is probably close to a direct transposition, but the fact that I've played f4 is advantageous. Usually, if I was playing the Nimzo Indian, I'd have to retreat my knight back to e1 in this type of position in order to play f4. Here I have a vastly improved position where I've already played f4, and my knight is already back on f3, blockading the e5 square. Controlling the e5 square, whatever you want to call it. Swap for Prez, well, maybe you can learn something here. He says he doesn't understand this kind of position, and this is a good stream for you. g6. Now I think you've made my decision for me, Vasilikos, because you know what, actually, no, you didn't really, because it's tempting. It's still tempting to go either way with my bishop to a3 or b2. Now that you're going to play bishop g7, it's even more reason for me to play like bishop a3. On the other hand, you weakened the long diagonal, so there's another vote for bishop b2. Knight a4. Don't really have another good square for that guy. Knights, 16 pawns on the board. There's a good chance that knights are as good or better than bishops. Also, black has a structural weakness. I strongly recommend that you guys who haven't done so study the games of Aaron Nimzovich. Very, very important. Even if you don't choose to play that style like he did, it's important that you understand the concepts that he employed. So I'm perfectly open to sacrificing an exchange in this kind of position. So I don't care too much about... I mean, the simplest way to do it would be knight takes c5, knight e4. Bishop a3, I guess. But we should just play bishop a3 straight up. And, well, we don't have to be fancy. I mean, I don't have to sacrifice the exchange here. Is this in poker terms like fancy play syndrome? To sacrifice an exchange here? It is a very, very good bishop. But I think maybe it may be an unnecessary sacrifice. But I don't care. I mean, it's good enough. The bishop is dead, and if he wins the exchange, his king is going to be trapped in the center by my bishop on a3. So this is probably like positionally lost for black. The very vague terminology, positionally lost. Dark squares are just a nightmare. If he chooses to sacrifice the exchange back, then we're just up a pawn for nothing. Like, for example, castles. Knight takes d7, bishop takes f8, and we're just winning. Queen f6, not a good move. f6 is probably not a good move. Very hard to defend the dark squares, and his bishop is the non-entity I was talking about earlier. And it's more complicated than that, because when one piece is bad, it's like a disease, you know, in your position. So this rook on a8 has a hard time getting into the game. As a result of one problem, we have multiple problems. Now another knight. I could also have played knight e5 or something like that. I'm trying to get the h7 pawn and ultimately get control of f6. The dark squares are falling apart. The advantage that black has, the bishop pair, not very relevant. No more bishop pair. Guys, time for one more game today. Who will it be? We have a challenge from Chesso Turco, who we haven't played in a while. I have a busy day today, so Yeah, this is an interesting move. I was thinking about this. Nice tactical solution of Vasilikos, but it's not going to be enough to save you. Because I have knight takes d7. I think knight takes d7. Maybe I have something trickier than that. But I want to get control of f6. Wow, he insta-took. And then I thought I played bishop d6. There's my computer again. Bishop d6 zoning in on one particular location. h6. Forced mate. That is forced mate, right? Queen d8, queen f7. Some openings would no longer be viable if castling was illegal. That's, I'm sure, true. This was a very instructive game in terms of like Nimzovician concepts. We had two mates. Thank you for the game. Chessa Turco, you're up next. It's the last one for today. Weird Wednesday, unusual opening stream. Chess Turco. Played 4 games. From Turkey. This is forced mate. But I mean, there's a lot to be learned from that kind of strategic game. I think that's a lesson that's like, you know, he can remember for a long time. And maybe all your chess life. Once you lose a game like that to this Nimzovician type of concept, it's very, very influential in the way you look at the game. E4, we need something different. So, what else can I play? Sometimes I play the Nimzovich defense with knight to c6. We're having a Nimzovich theme here the last 2 games. I mean, this is named after Nimzovich, but he actually probably didn't play it that many times. Knight f3, though. Not the main move. I mean, obviously, white normally plays d4, and the main line would be d5. Sometimes I play d6. But now, what to do, you know? d5 is kind of like a weird Scandinavian. I usually play d6. This line is not considered that great. Plucro says f5. I think that Solte Ego, one of the players who plays here a lot on the stream, played that type of stuff against me, yeah. f5 is really pushing the limits of rationality, I think. I'm not gonna defend f5. That's a Shirazi type of thing. f5 is really pretty dubious. I don't play the Dutch, and I'm definitely not playing f5 when white plays e4. I mean, the Dutch is dangerous enough, but when white's played e4, you're not going to find me playing f5 in the early stage of the opening. I mean, I did play the Latvian once here on the stream, but it's pretty dubious. I will play the Schliemann, though. I wanted to play the Schliemann today, and otherwise known as, wait, what do the Russians call the Schliemann? The Yanish. Or Janish. I don't know how it's pronounced, but never heard anyone actually say it, I don't think, who was knowledgeable. Knight on BD2. This is a super quiet move, and we're going to go into something that's like a Kali system, I guess. I guess a fianchetto type of setup here. But it's quite a solid move, you know. I mean, this is okay. Is DST I am William? No, of course not. I am William is Slaggy. The I am me. So I never really comment too much in the chat. I mean, why should I when I'm talking here? But we don't have our moderator today. Jeroen is not here. I don't think he's here. So nobody's there to answer for me, as sometimes he does. Waiting for my turn. Would more people play like Paul Morphy if there was no castling? Oh. Yeah. I guess so. I don't think Morphy minded castling. However, bishop to b5 is an interesting move. I could allow d5 and respond with a6. So I'm not sure that it's necessary to play bishop d7, is it? Bishop g7, d5, a6. Bishop takes c6, b takes c6, pawn takes c6. Now, would that pawn remaining there be a problem? Let's look at this line for a second. Like bishop g7, d5, a6, bishop c6, b takes c6, d takes c6, castles, white to play. Well, I think it's quite dynamic and interesting. I mean, bishop d7 is certainly the safest move for black here, but I think that playing this opening like the Nimzovich, I'm looking for complications. I'm looking for ways to make the game sharp and trick a lower rated opponent into maybe overextending himself or giving me the initiative somehow by overreaching. And so on a practical level, I think that, you know, bishop g7 and the idea of d5 a6 is far more complicated and a better approach against someone that you are expected to win against. Bishop d7 is Octopus Rampage. You have a very good instinct, my friend. Yeah, this is the last game for today. I've got Wednesday is really one of my toughest days, so a lot of responsibilities. All right, so we don't get the complications of d5. I'm calling his whole concept into question, though, by ignoring something like bishop b5, right? I'm saying, like, hey, you know what? You just put your bishop on b5 for no reason. Congratulations. We're calling it into question, and that piece may end up losing time, just being misplaced. But in fairness to Chess Turco, I don't think it's that misplaced. You know, I think that it's influencing the center in its own way, and I'm just not going to go out of my way to play along with responding to bishop b5. I'm going to leave it there and hope that the complications will, you know, the tension, increasing the tension, I should say, is the best way to try to beat lower-rated players. Maintaining a tense situation. Maximize your chances to win. You know, I don't really like bishop d7, and then I'll end up trading bishops and reducing the amount of pieces on the board. Now a6, rook e1 is a good move. I don't like playing a6 in principle. But I don't have a lot of space here, and it is becoming difficult to come up with an alternative and constructive plan. Knight d7, some kind of very hyper-modern plan like knight h5 might be interesting. Knight h5 with the ideas of king's side, king's Indian. A king's Indian type of approach might be interesting. On the other hand, my knight could get sidelined on that square as well. So it is kind of a tough call. There's nothing wrong with the routine bishop d7. After all my lectures about leaving the bishop on b5. I will make a decision. a6 just chasing that guy. Or perhaps it wants to go. I feel that my knight is misplaced on h5. Out of the game. d7 is passive. Bishop d7 is routine. Even rook b8 has a problem in that I'd like to retreat my knight back there in the event of d5 probably. But it's probably not a big deal. Fancy move. This is one way to perhaps discourage White from playing bishop takes c6. A constructive move. At some future date playing b5. I believe it's c4 here. That changes the whole position dramatically. He has no ability to play c3 anymore, and I feel like he might have overextended himself. But he also has some tricks, apparently. Nothing special, I would imagine. A very interesting move there might have been like knight b4. We gave a big lecture last game about bishop on c8 not being a great piece. It's a little different here. At least it has a diagonal to move on, not blocked by a pawn on e6. Looking for knight a5. I think white is probably better now. After this, I was afraid of knight a5. Looks like white is seriously better with the control of a5. This is a very serious threat. I probably should have played bishop g4 in this spot, just to trade pieces, because I don't have much space. Then knight a5, queen d7. But still there, I could have problems because of queen a4. In fact, maybe very serious problems. Quite awkward, in fact, for black. Perhaps I was right not to play bishop g4. This move is very, very troublesome. Now I'm in an extremely passive situation after knight e8. But on the plus side, my position is quite compact and I don't have that many weaknesses. a6 and c6 a little bit. Only move. But I think Chess a Turco is I'm a little scared. That move I don't think is necessary, though not horrible for white. Two recaptures here. Not horrible for white, not necessary either. I don't think he needs to make that exchange on f6. Not necessarily bad. Chess a Turco playing quite the good positional game. a5, symmetrical structure. Knights tend to be very good against the bishop pair. I have noticed this in this type of symmetrical type of structure. However, here g5 might start to be good for black at some point. Some risk involved, obviously. I think h5 may be asking too much. I want to kill this bishop a little bit and complicated position. I'm thinking about my knight on e8 and repositioning it. He wants to play c5 apparently. On a strategic level, white's play is master strength so far. He may fail on time or just some kind of tactic, but strategically, I think his play is on the level of a master. Placement of the piece is excellent here. Looking for defending my a6 pawn. We've got white squares. The one thorn in white's side is his inability to be able to control the white squares really adequately. So my bishop, which could have been completely bad in some types of positions, is now, this is actually turning out to be pretty relevant, both strategically and positionally. Complicated game. And he just blundered. Or did he? Bishop f5, rook takes. Bishop takes d3. I take a queen, he takes a knight and a queen. Take a queen and a rook. So I guess he just tactically blundered. He's probably not listening to the stream, which a lot of people choose not to do. I mean, I was talking about bishop f5, so. He was worried about his b2 pawn, but there's nothing to fear. I have no way to displace the knight on a5. I mean, a5 is an idea, but I didn't really have time for that. So, this is a very complicated, interesting game. I think that white is better, or was better, right up until the end. You know, if we look at this here, the computer has them at 0.7 better. H3 is an interesting move. Probably the placement of the queen on D3 is not optimal. I thought that C5 was his plan here. You know, although I did overlook that I could play bishop E6. I like this idea. C takes D, C takes D, and the idea of putting the bishop on D5. I had forgotten that my queen is protecting C6. Anyway, it's a very complicated position where white is probably still better. But that's the kind of risk you have to take sometimes to win in this sort of opening. That's a very abstract and risky undertaking, but usually a good way to try to beat lower rated players by getting a very complicated position. Even if you're slightly worse, there's a lot of complications strategically in the position. A lot of pieces on the board. It's a little bit imbalanced. It's a good chance to win. Anyway, guys, we will be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. CET with normal blitz and classical chess here on lichess. I'd like to thank everybody for joining me. Please check out my YouTube channel, Video Chess Training on YouTube. And I hope that the stream was instructive to everyone. We will also ask you if you're interested in lessons or training to hit me up with an email. My email is videochesstrainer@gmail.com. And then finally, I'd like to thank those of you who have donated to the stream via PayPal, supporting the stream on my YouTube channel. It is much appreciated. We already have several donors for 2017, and hopefully we'll keep the trend going. So much appreciated for the help. Again, guys, thank you for joining me here in my stream, and we'll be back tomorrow. Bye-bye.